Eek! The venue staff screamed. In a flash, a Coca-Cola stain spread on the pristine white wedding dress. On the morning of my wedding day, I was dumbfounded by what happened. A child did it. The ceremony is cancelled now, my mother-in-law said, laughing. On the most significant day of my life. She looked satisfied to have given me the ultimate harassment. Completely unaware of the shocking things that were about to unfold. I'm Amy Brown. I'm 28 years old and work at a company. I've decided to marry Howard Smith, who is 2 years my senior and a colleague at work. After dating for 2 years. I met Howard 3 years ago, when I was transferred to the PR department where he was a senior. He was the son of the company president and famously the next president, so at first, I was nervous and unsure how to interact with him. However, he never rested on his laurels and was passionate about his work. And he was humble towards me, his junior. One day, he invited me out for a meal and confessed his feelings. Initially, we started as friends, but as we dated more, I found joy in being with him and naturally fell for him. By the time we had been dating for 2 years, we had become indispensable to each other. I had met his parents, who were always welcoming. And we had started discussing our future. That's why when he proposed, I immediately accepted. The following is when I went to greet his family at their home to announce our marriage. Hello. Long time no see. His mother greeted me with a smile. His father, the company president, kindly said, "Good to see you. Make yourself at home." We were led into the spacious living room, and I sat on the sofa opposite his parents. After some small talk, he announced our marriage. I'm going to marry Amy. Oh, really? At that moment, my mother-in-law looked me up and down as if sizing me up. I nervously looked down. I've been with her for 2 years and realized she's the one. His father joyfully said. That's great. Howard, congratulations. I'm relieved Amy is your partner. I want you two to be happy. I felt relieved to hear this. Are you serious? But my relief was short-lived as my mother-in-law began sternly. Amy, how did you get close to him? How did you ingratiate yourself with him? The usual elegant and calm face of his mother had transformed into something monstrous. Mom, calm down. He tried to soothe her, but her anger seemed uncontainable. Amy, your family runs a small bar in the countryside, right? Yes, that's right. I can't believe Howard would even consider marrying someone from that family. I thought it was just a casual thing when I let them go out. Stop it. His father restrained her as she looked ready to grab me by the collar. She must be after the money. I won't accept such a filthy girl as a bride. Her breakdown terrified me, and I froze. Mom, enough. He said calmly. She's important to me. I don't know what you've misunderstood. But I've always been serious and sincerely dating her. I've told you many times to marry someone suitable. A girl like this lowers our family's status. Be quiet now. His father sternly told her. Amy, I'm really sorry for my wife's rude remarks. I felt embarrassed as the president apologized. No. I approve of your marriage. She's the woman Howard chose, so you should accept her too. His mother looked down and remained silent for the rest of the day. We later visited my parents, and they approved of the marriage. While it was a concern that his mother hadn't accepted our marriage, we registered our union. Regarding work after marriage, I liked my job and wanted to keep my social connections, so I decided to continue. My husband also approved of me continuing to work. The wedding preparations started around this time. On days off, my mother-in-law began visiting our house uninvited. My husband said it was okay not to greet her, but I couldn't ignore her, so I let her in. Then, she invariably started with her insults and sarcasm. "So, Amy is continuing her job? Quit your job to support Howard. As a future president's wife, you're disqualified." Every time my mother-in-law visited, it made my stomach hurt. "Mom, please go home." My husband always protected me, but his mother's sarcasm never ceased. I believed she would accept me eventually. And even when she came over and spewed sarcasm, I faced it. Later, when I went to try on the wedding dress, my mother-in-law forcibly came along. "No matter what I wore," she complained, "that doesn't suit you at all. You have no class, whatever you wear looks cheap." My husband tried to protect me by repeatedly telling her to stop harassing me. When my husband wasn't home, she would come over. And the insults would get even worse. "Everyone will be disappointed that you're the bride. Get a divorce quickly." I've been mentally exhausted by my mother-in-law's relentless nagging. "Please don't say such things." I responded with a forced smile, but I felt down inside. The thought of having to deal with my mother-in-law for the rest of my life saddened me. My husband has repeatedly asked his father to stop my mother-in-law's harassment and insults, and it seems his father has been trying to persuade her. However, my mother-in-law insists she's done nothing wrong. As a company president, my father-in-law can't always keep an eye on her. He told me to avoid going out during breaks. However, this led to her calling me directly. "You're just a useless bride, so it's time for you to leave," she screamed through the phone. I had been patient until now. But this time I couldn't help but cry. "Amy, I'm really sorry for making you feel this way." Finally, my husband went to his parents' house and told his mother that he would cut ties with her. "You want to cut ties with me?" Hearing this, my mother-in-law seemed to reflect and apologized to me. "Amy, I'm really sorry for everything. I didn't mean to harass you." Upon hearing this, my husband said, "No, it was definitely harassment. Please don't come to our house again." His father added a firm word. "Enough is enough." Since then, my mother-in-law's harassment has stopped completely. She no longer comes to our house, and the phone doesn't ring. Thanks to this, our wedding preparations proceeded smoothly. I thought I had been freed from my mother-in-law's harassment. Half a year after our registration, we welcomed the morning of our wedding in the fall. The wedding was planned with 500 guests, including company associates, friends, and relatives of both sides. I was in the bride's waiting room early in the morning, busy with makeup and hair preparations, including the ceremony, reception, and a change of dresses. 3 gowns were prepared and hung facing forward, each chosen especially for this day. In the midst of this, ignoring the staff's attempt to stop her, my mother-in-law entered the room with her 4-year-old nephew. "Good morning, Amy." My mother-in-law seemed in a good mood, smiling. "Mother, I'm sorry, but I'm in the middle of preparations. So please wait in the relatives' waiting room." I was about to change, so I told her that. "Come here, Sean." Ignoring me, my mother-in-law took her nephew's hand and stood in front of the dresses. That's when it happened. Her nephew opened the cap of the Coca-Cola he was holding. At that moment, Coca-Cola sprayed out forcefully. Eek! The venue staff screamed. In an instant, a Coca-Cola stain spread on the pristine white wedding dress. The staff in the room were frozen. Not only the ham but the Coca-Cola had splashed up to the chest area, leaving a large stain. The staff hurriedly tried to wipe off the stain with a handkerchief. The hairdresser was stunned by the incident. The nephew seemed not to fully understand the situation but cried due to the commotion. A child did it. The ceremony is cancelled now, my mother-in-law said, laughing. I was dumbfounded by the shock. If the stain couldn't be removed, what would I do? There was an option to wear the dress for the color change, but unfortunately, the staff tried to remove the stain, but it seemed it wouldn't come off immediately. More staff arrived, and the scene became chaotic. The dress might not return to its original state. As I looked at the dress, I suddenly realized, that's not my dress. Huh? My mother-in-law's smile faded. It turned out that it wasn't my dress. At first glance, it looked identical, but the embroidery was completely different. The venue staff hurriedly checked the dress. We sincerely apologize. That dress isn't meant for the bride. We mistakenly got another one ready instead. What? Then whose dress was it? I became anxious. We will prepare your dress immediately. The staff took the stained dress and left the room. My mother-in-law, who had been happy until now, turned pale at the fact that she had stained someone else's dress. I immediately sensed from her expression that she had intended to stain my dress, using her nephew. The way the Coca-Cola sprayed out was unusual, suggesting she might have tampered with it before entering the room. Regardless, using her nephew for such extreme harassment was unforgivable. I'll be excused for a moment. Concerned by her nephew's crying, which could be heard outside, my sister-in-law entered the room. Mom, weren't you just supposed to check in? Upon entering, my sister-in-law was surprised to see her Coca-Cola-covered nephew. What happened? She wiped his face with a handkerchief and tried to calm her inconsolable nephew. I explained what had happened. What? He stained someone else's dress? My sister-in-law was very surprised. Overwhelmed by anger, I blurted out my thoughts. No, it's not your son's fault. Your mother made him do it. What? My sister-in-law looked at my mother-in-law. No, that's not true. Stop making false accusations. My mother-in-law hurriedly defended herself. He was just trying to drink the Coca-Cola when it sprayed out. It was an accident. However, my sister-in-law countered. But Sean can't buy Coca-Cola, right? And he's still too young to have had it before. Why did you give it to him? Kids like Coca-Cola, right? I thought he'd drink it. My mother-in-law stumbled over her words. I seized the moment. The way the Coca-Cola sprayed out was not normal. Did you tamper with it before giving it to Sean? No, that's not true. Please stop. My mother-in-law held her head as she responded. It was an accident, I say. Really? My sister-in-law pressed my mother-in-law as my nephew continued to cry. Perhaps finally realizing her defeat, my mother-in-law confessed. I tampered with the Coca-Cola and got Sean to pop it open right in front of the dress. Hearing this, my sister-in-law sighed heavily. Why would you do such a thing? She asked, holding her head. It's all this bride's fault. What? I was puzzled by her response. I've been trying to guide this bride, but she complained that it was too harsh. Because of that, Howard told me he'd cut ties with me. And even my husband started to dislike me. My mother-in-law shouted, pointing at me. I was so taken aback by her words that I retorted. Regardless of whether that was guidance, There's no excuse for ruining a dress on the day of the ceremony. Isn't this just harassment? My mother-in-law became infuriated in response. Because you made me feel terrible. Despite her history of harassing me, she seemed to justify her revenge because she felt wronged. I don't care about that. The harassment was real. And both Howard and your husband were concerned for me. Being disliked by them is a result of your own actions, isn't it? I responded calmly. I will never accept a bride of your background. She approached me, raising her voice. I don't care if you don't accept me. I had long lost any desire to get along with my mother-in-law. Everyone, please calm down. My sister-in-law intervened between us. The ceremony is soon. This isn't the time to argue. She then turned to me and apologized. I'm really sorry my mom caused trouble on the day of the ceremony. It might be difficult, but please try to calm down. Amy, you don't have to worry about anything. It seemed my sister-in-law hadn't been aware of the ongoing harassment. But she seemed to grasp the situation somewhat. As she said this while grabbing my mother-in-law's arm. Let go of me. My mother-in-law protested, but my sister-in-law ignored her. I won't allow Mom to bother you any longer, so please switch gears and prepare. She forcibly took my mother-in-law and the crying nephew out of the room. I was still quite shaken after they left. I hadn't expected such an incident on the morning of my wedding. Meanwhile, my dress was properly arranged. However, I worried about the owner of the stained dress. As I pondered, the beautician brought me a warm drink, and I tried to calm my nerves. There were company associates among the attendees, and I needed to compose myself. Somehow, I managed to refocus and headed to our wedding. Ultimately, it was a very happy ceremony. Everyone who had been part of my life celebrated with us, which was both gratifying and joyous. However, when I glanced at my husband's relatives, the atmosphere seemed somber. Perhaps news of my mother-in-law's actions had spread. Later, I learned from the venue staff that the dress ruined by the Coca-Cola was another bride's haute couture dress. Our wedding took place in the morning, but there was another ceremony in the evening at the same venue, and that was the dress intended for use. The woman supposed to wear it cried upon learning what happened. They managed to arrange another dress on the day, but not being able to wear the dress she had prepared for her once-in-a-lifetime event was irrevocable. The venue, responsible for the dress mix-up, compensated the woman. Nevertheless, my father-in-law, accompanied by my mother-in-law, apologized to the woman and paid a substantial amount in damages. Of course, money couldn't solve everything. I blamed myself, thinking none of this would have happened if I had been on better terms with my mother-in-law. When my husband learned about the incident, he apologized repeatedly for the hardship I faced. He was so infuriated that he decided to cut all ties with his mom. About 6 months after the wedding, my in-laws divorced. My father-in-law always felt uneasy about my mother-in-law. Although she appeared to be a sweet and sophisticated president's wife, she was infamous for causing trouble for anyone she didn't like when no one was watching. Due to ongoing troubles, he hired a detective to investigate her, which revealed her wrongdoings, including harassment of neighbors and shouting at store staff. He was also fed up with her slander and harassment towards me. My father-in-law had planned to divorce after Howard's wedding had settled down. Despite some residual feelings for his longtime spouse, this incident was the last straw. Initially, my mother-in-law refused to divorce, but after separation and facing my steadfast father-in-law, she eventually agreed. losing her position as the president's wife and being disowned by her son meant she would no longer harass me. Only my sister-in-law seemed to care for the now dejected mother-in-law. But my nephew, possibly traumatized, cried every time he saw her, making it difficult for them to meet. It was all the seeds my mother-in-law had sown. I felt no sympathy for her. I am now enjoying a happy married life.